The first warning came 3 hours after Liralay's rescue, when the ship's long-range sensors detected incoming vessels approaching from the outer system. 6 ships moving in perfect formation at speeds that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. Even the most advanced human vessels couldn't match that kind of velocity. "Korath?" Marcus asked, helping Liralay to the ship's bridge. She was growing stronger by the hour as the ship's medical systems worked to repair the damage from her long imprisonment. But she still moved carefully. Liralay studied the sensor displays with eyes that seemed to process information far faster than any human could manage. "No, these are hegemony vessels. The species that replaced the Korath when their empire fell 3 months ago." "Replaced them? What do you mean?" "The hegemony conquered the Korath territories, but they maintain many of the same policies. They believe in order through dominance, control through fear. When they discovered that Korath prison ships were activating across the galaxy, they decided to—" Liralay paused, her expression growing grim. "They decided to finish what the Korath started." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. "They're hunting the survivors." "Yes, and this ship's activation when you freed me has marked us as a priority target." The communication systems crackled to life, filled with harsh voices speaking in a language that sounded like grinding metal. The universal translator worked for several seconds before producing a translation that made Marcus clench his fists in anger. "Attention occupants of Korath containment. Vessel designation 77 Kappa. You are harboring escaped prisoners in violation of hegemony pacification protocols. Surrender the Zephyrian subject immediately or face immediate termination." Marcus looked at Liralay, who was already moving toward the ship's command systems with newfound purpose. "What can this ship do against 6 hegemony vessels? In its current condition? Very little. But you have shown me that human creativity can accomplish the impossible." Liralay's hands moved across control panels that were reshaping themselves to accommodate both Zephyrian and human physiology. "Tell me, Marcus Chun, how far are you willing to go to protect freedom?" Marcus thought about everything he had learned in the past 2 days. An entire peaceful civilization imprisoned for trying to bring unity to the galaxy. A princess locked away for 3 centuries simply for existing. And now, a new empire that wanted to finish the genocide that the Korath had started. "As far as it takes," he said simply. Liralay smiled. And Marcus saw something in her expression that reminded him of every human engineer who had ever been told that something was impossible. "Then let me show you what Zephyrian ships were truly designed to do." The ship began to transform around them. Walls flowed like liquid metal, reshaping themselves into configurations that hurt Marcus's eyes to look at directly. The bridge expanded into a command center that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with holographic displays showing information in ways that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to intuitive understanding. "The Korath never understood," Liralay explained as she worked. "They saw our ships as vessels for transportation. But Zephyrian technology is based on harmony, connection, unity. Our ships don't just carry crews, they become part of them." Marcus felt the ship's consciousness touch his mind again, but this time the contact was deeper, more complete. Suddenly he could sense every system on the vessel, every quantum fluctuation in its exotic matter hull. More importantly, he could feel Liralay's presence intertwined with his own, her centuries of knowledge and experience flowing through the neural link. "I understand," Marcus whispered, and he truly did. The ship wasn't just a machine, it was a living extension of its crew, capable of adapting and evolving in real time. And with human creativity combined with Zephyrian wisdom, it could become something unprecedented. The hegemony ships opened fire as soon as they came within weapons range, unleashing energy beams that could have vaporized a human dreadnought. But the Zephyrian vessel moved like a dancer, flowing between the attacks with grace that seemed to mock the laws of physics. Marcus found himself piloting by instinct. His mind merged with the ship's quantum consciousness in ways that let him predict and respond to threats before they fully materialized. "Impossible," came the transmission from the lead hegemony vessel. "Korath ships do not possess such capabilities." That's because this isn't a Korath ship anymore, Marcus replied, surprised to hear his own voice carrying across the communication link. This is what happens when you imprison people instead of trying to understand them. The response was predictable: more weapons fire, this time from all 6 vessels simultaneously. But Marcus and Lirelei were already moving, the ship's consciousness allowing them to coordinate their actions with perfect timing. As Marcus piloted through the energy storms, Lirelei began activating systems that had been dormant since the fall of the Zephyrian Nexus. These hegemony ships, Marcus observed as he studied their attack patterns. They're fast and powerful, but they're not very creative. They're using standard formation tactics. Yes, Lirelei agreed. They believe in overwhelming force rather than adaptive strategy. It served them well against the Korath, who fought the same way. But they have never faced a truly integrated cruise ship consciousness. Marcus grinned as an idea began forming in his mind. It was crazy, dangerous, and probably impossible, which made it exactly the kind of plan that humans were known for throughout the galaxy. Lirelei, can this ship duplicate its quantum signature? Temporarily, yes. But why would we want to appear as multiple vessels when we are only one? Because, Marcus said as he began plotting a course that would have terrified any sane pilot, sometimes the best way to win a fight is to change the rules of engagement. What followed was a display of tactical creativity that would be studied by military academies for centuries afterward. Using the ship's quantum manipulation abilities, Marcus and Lirelei created multiple probability echoes versions of their vessel that existed in slightly different dimensional phases. To the hegemony sensors, it appeared as if they were suddenly facing not one ship, but dozens. But the real genius of the plan was in how Marcus used human unpredictability combined with Zephyrian harmony. Instead of trying to outfight 6 superior vessels, they turned the engagement into a 3-dimensional chess game. Each probability echo moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully coordinated, forcing the hegemony ships to spread their fire across multiple targets that might or might not be real. This is not standard battle doctrine, transmitted the hegemony commander, his voice tight with frustration. You are violating the established parameters of engagement. That's the point, Marcus replied cheerfully. Humans don't really do standard very well. The breakthrough came when Marcus realized that the hegemony ship's superior speed was actually working against them. Their pilots were trained to maintain formation and follow predetermined attack patterns, but in a multidimensional battlefield where the enemy could appear anywhere at any time, that predictability became a weakness, using a maneuver that no military textbook would have approved. Marcus flew their ship directly through the center of the hegemony formation while Lirelei synchronized the ship's quantum fields with their opponent's engine systems. The result was spectacular. 5 of the 6 hegemony vessels found their propulsion systems fluctuating wildly as competing quantum frequencies interfered with their exotic matter cores. The lead ship, however, had managed to avoid the quantum interference, and its commander was apparently clever enough to adapt to unconventional tactics. Instead of trying to maintain formation with his disabled companions, he broke off and began hunting the real ship among its probability echoes. He's learning, Marcus observed as the enemy vessel's targeting became more accurate. Yes, Lirelei agreed. But he is still thinking like a conqueror rather than a liberator. Watch. What Lirelei did next demonstrated why the Zephyrians had been known throughout the galaxy as master diplomats. Instead of attacking the remaining ship, she opened a direct communication channel and began transmitting something that made the universal translator work furiously to process. It was music. Not just any music, but a harmonic frequency that spoke directly to the consciousness of any sentient being. Marcus felt it washing over his mind like a gentle tide, carrying with it concepts of peace, understanding, and the possibility of cooperation instead of conflict. The effect on the hegemony commander was immediate and dramatic. His ship's weapons powered down, and his voice over the communication link was filled with confusion and wonder. What is this? How are you making me feel? I am showing you what my people tried to teach the galaxy before the Korath silenced us, Lirelei replied gently. There is another way, Commander. A path that leads to growth rather than destruction, to unity rather than domination. Marcus watched in amazement as the hegemony ships gradually powered down their weapon systems. The harmonic frequency that Lirelay was transmitting didn't control minds or force compliance, it simply opened them to possibilities they had never considered. It was perhaps the most profoundly human concept he had ever seen expressed through alien technology, the idea that people could choose to be better than they were. Marcus returned to the derelict ship 18 hours later with equipment that would have made a university research team jealous. 3 cargo drones followed him through the docking tube, loaded with quantum computers, universal translators, portable fusion generators, and every piece of alien tech analysis gear he could legally acquire on short notice. Some of it hadn't been entirely legal to acquire. The countdown timer now showed just over 29 hours remaining. And Marcus had barely slept since leaving the ship. He had spent the entire night studying his recordings and consulting with Dr. Sarah Kim, the best xenarchaeologist in the Terra system. Via encrypted quantum link, Dr. Kim had been both fascinated and horrified by the footage. Marcus, this is incredible. That containment technology is at least 500 years ahead of anything we've seen from the known alien species. But the being you found, their physiological markers match historical descriptions from the Zephyrian diplomatic archives. Marcus had never heard of the Zephyrian archives, but Dr. Kim's explanation had made his blood run cold. The Zephyrians were an ancient spacefaring race that had vanished mysteriously about 300 years ago. They had been known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and peaceful diplomatic efforts. According to the archives, they had been working to establish a galactic council of species when their entire civilization simply disappeared. If that's a Zephyrian down there, Dr. Kim had warned, then whoever imprisoned them has technology that could threaten every known species in the galaxy. Be very, very careful, Marcus. Now, as Marcus descended through the hidden shaft once again, he carried with him not just equipment but the weight of potentially galactic consequences. The soft hum of the containment field grew louder as he approached the chamber, and he could see the pale blue glow of the trapped being's skin even before his helmet. Lights illuminated the space. The alien's eyes tracked his movement immediately, and Marcus thought he saw relief in that otherworldly gaze. The being gestured frantically toward the countdown timer, which now displayed symbols that were clearly changing faster than before. Marcus set up his equipment quickly, connecting the universal translator to the ship's power systems and positioning quantum scanners around the containment field. As the translator began analyzing the alien's previous communication attempts, Marcus started speaking aloud, hoping the system would pick up his words. My name is Marcus Chun. I'm a human engineer. I'm going to try to get you out of there. But I need to understand what's going to happen when that timer reaches 0. The alien's eyes widened with surprise, and they began making rapid gestures with their hands. The universal translator's display flickered as it processed the movements, and slowly words began appearing on Marcus's screen. Human? You are the species from the third spiral arm? The young builders? The translation was rough, but understandable. Yes, I'm human. You know about us? The alien nodded vigorously, then pointed at themselves. I am Lirelay, heir daughter of the Zephyrian Nexus. I have studied your species. You are known for your creative problem solving. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just any alien. This was royalty from a civilization that had vanished centuries ago. What happened to your people? And why are you trapped here? Lirelay's expression darkened, and the patterns of light around the containment field seemed to pulse with her emotional state. The Korath. They call themselves the Purifiers. They believe the galaxy must be cleansed of what they call chaotic influences. My people tried to unite the species in peace. The Korath saw this as chaos that must be eliminated. They destroyed your entire civilization? Not destroyed, contained, imprisoned, scattered across hidden places like this? Lirelay gestured to the chamber around her. I was captured during the final battle at Zephyr Prime. They have kept me here as a trophy, a reminder? I do not know their full purpose. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. The idea of an entire peaceful civilization being imprisoned by zealots was exactly the kind of injustice that made humans fight back against impossible odds. How long have you been here? 287 of your years. The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. Nearly 3 centuries in that energy prison, conscious the entire time. No wonder the alien had looked at him with such desperate hope. And the countdown timer? What happens when it reaches 0? Liralay's whole body seemed to shrink with fear. The final protocol. The Korath programmed the ship to eliminate me if their empire ever fell. The timer was activated when the ship lost contact with their command network. If they cannot maintain control, they would rather destroy evidence than risk their prisoners being freed. Marcus stared at the countdown display. 28 hours and 17 minutes. How long has it been since the ship lost contact? 3 days ago. Something must have disrupted their communications network. That explained why the ship had ended up in a salvage auction. The Korath Empire had likely collapsed or been destroyed, and their hidden prison ships had been set adrift when their control systems failed. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction at the thought that the zealots had finally met their end. But it was tempered by the urgent reality of the countdown. Can you tell me how to disable the containment field safely? Liralay shook her head sadly. The system is designed to prevent escape. Any attempt to disable it incorrectly will trigger the final protocol immediately. Even I do not know the correct sequence. Marcus studied the control panels around the chamber, his engineer's mind automatically cataloging energy flows and system connections. The Korath technology was sophisticated, but it followed certain universal principles of physics. Energy had to flow somewhere, and every system had weak points. What about the ship's other systems? Are there any Zephyrian technologies still active? Liralay's eyes brightened with sudden hope. Yes, the ship was originally Zephyrian. The Korath built their prison systems on top of our technology, but they could not fully understand our engineering. There are hidden subroutines, backup systems they never discovered. Can you access them? Not from here. But if you could reach the true bridge, the one beneath what the Korath built, you might be able to activate the ship's original programming. Marcus grinned. Hidden systems and forgotten subroutines were exactly the kind of challenge he lived for. Where is this hidden bridge? The ship has 3 levels of reality: physical, energy, and quantum. The Korath only understood the first 2. The quantum bridge exists in probability space. It is there when you need it to be there. That sounded like typical alien mysticism. But Marcus had learned that advanced civilizations often described technology in terms that seemed magical to less advanced species. Quantum mechanics did allow for some pretty strange possibilities. How do I access it? You must think like a Zephyrian. See the ship not as it is, but as it could be. Your species is known for this ability. You see potential where others see only limitation. Marcus spent the next 4 hours exploring the ship with new eyes, carrying a portable quantum scanner that Dr. Kim had insisted he bring. As he moved through the corridors, he began to notice subtle patterns in the alien architecture. The curves and flowing lines weren't just aesthetic, they were directing quantum fields in ways that created dimensional pockets. The breakthrough came when Marcus stopped trying to find the hidden bridge and instead started thinking about where it should logically be located. In any ship, the primary bridge would be positioned for optimal command and control. As he stood in the center of what the Korath had built, Marcus closed his eyes and imagined the ship as it had originally been designed. When he opened his eyes, there was a doorway that hadn't been there before. It shimmered slightly, like heat waves, and seemed to exist more as a possibility than a physical structure. Marcus stepped through it and found himself in a chamber that took his breath away. The Zephyrian bridge was alive. The walls moved with patterns of light that responded to his presence, and holographic displays materialized around him showing star maps and technical schematics. The central command chair seemed to reshape itself to accommodate his human proportions as he approached. Marcus sat down and immediately felt the ship's consciousness touch his mind. It was a gentle contact, curious and welcoming, nothing like the aggressive intrusion he had expected. Images flowed through his thoughts. The ship's original purpose as a diplomatic vessel, its capture by the Korath, the terrible modifications made to its systems, but most importantly, he saw the ship's deep desire to be free. The quantum interface required no translation. Marcus found himself understanding the alien controls instinctively, as if the ship was teaching him as he worked. Together, they began the delicate process of unraveling the Korath prison systems while preserving Liralay's life. The work was incredibly complex. The Korath had woven their containment technology so deeply into the ship's systems that removing it was like performing surgery on a living being. Every cut had to be precise, every modification carefully calculated to prevent triggering the final protocol. Marcus lost track of time as he worked. His consciousness partially merged with the ship's quantum systems. He could feel Liralay's presence through the ship's sensors, her life force flickering within the containment field like a... Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the massive hulk floating in the salvage yard's zero-gravity dock. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Its hull curved in impossible ways, made from some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols were etched along its sides, and several sections showed battle damage from weapons he couldn't identify. The auctioneer's voice echoed through his helmet's com system. Lot 47, unknown alien vessel, approximately 200 meters in length. No identification of origin species. Warning, internal systems may be active and potentially dangerous. Bidding starts at 5,000 credits. Marcus grinned. 5,000 credits was nothing for a ship this size, even if it was just scrap metal. As the chief engineer for the Terra Colonial Mining Consortium, he had been authorized to acquire alien technology for reverse engineering. Most bidders were scared off by the warning, but Marcus had been crawling around dangerous machinery since he was 12 years old. 5,000, he called out through his com. Silence filled the auction space. Other bidders shifted nervously in their environmental suits, looking at the ominous vessel with obvious concern. Going once, going twice. Sold to bidder 77 Alpha, the auctioneer announced 3 hours later. Marcus was suited up and ready to board his new acquisition. The docking tube had connected successfully to what appeared to be an airlock, though the controls were completely alien. He studied the symbols for several minutes before noticing that one panel seemed to respond to heat. Pressing his gloved hand against, it caused the symbols to glow with a soft blue light. The airlock cycled with a sound like rushing water. And Marcus found himself standing in a corridor that defied human architectural logic. The walls curved upward and seemed to pulse gently, as if the ship itself was breathing. Emergency lighting cast an eerie purple glow over everything, and the air felt thick despite his suit's readings showing it was perfectly breathable. Marcus activated his recording equipment and began documenting everything. The corridor branched off in 3 directions, each one curving away into darkness. He chose the path that seemed to lead toward the ship's center and began his exploration. The first few chambers, he discovered, were clearly meant for ship operations. What he assumed was the bridge contained control panels with thousands of symbols and displays that flickered between different alien languages. The pilot's chair was designed for a being much taller than a human, with strange indentations that suggested the aliens had very different anatomy. Marcus spent hours cataloging systems and taking detailed scans. The technology was incredibly advanced, using energy manipulation methods that human science barely understood. Power conduits ran through the walls like veins, carrying some kind of exotic energy that made his instruments go crazy with readings. As he worked deeper into the ship, Marcus noticed something odd. According to his mapping software, there should be 3 more decks below his current level, but he hadn't found any way to access them. The ship's layout didn't make sense from an engineering perspective. There were gaps in the structure that shouldn't exist. It wasn't until he was examining what appeared to be a storage bay that he found the hidden access panel. Unlike the other alien controls, this one was concealed behind what looked like a solid wall. Only the slight temperature difference detected by his Suit sensors revealed that there was something behind the surface. Marcus pressed against various points on the wall until he heard a soft click. A section of the wall slid away, revealing a narrow shaft that led downward. The air that rose from the opening was different somehow. Carrying a faint metallic scent that his suit's filters couldn't quite eliminate, he clipped a safety line to his belt and began his descent. The shaft was clearly not meant for normal ship access. There were no handholds or proper ladder rungs, just small indentations in the walls that barely provided grip for his boots. As he climbed down, Marcus wondered what the alien designers had been trying to hide. The shaft ended in a small chamber that felt more like a cell than a proper room. The walls here were different, made from some kind of translucent material that hummed with contained energy. As Marcus's helmet lights swept across the space, he saw something that made his heart stop. In the center of the chamber was a containment field, shimmering like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Suspended within it was a figure that was clearly alive but completely motionless. The being was humanoid but obviously alien, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Long silver hair floated around its head as if underwater, and it wore robes that appeared to be made from some kind of living fabric that shifted colors as Marcus watched. Most shocking of all were the being's eyes. They were open and aware, tracking Marcus's movements with unmistakable intelligence. The alien was conscious but completely trapped within the energy field. Marcus moved closer, his engineering mind already trying to understand the containment system. The field generator was built into the floor and ceiling, creating a perfect cylinder of energy that held the being in suspended animation. Status displays around the chamber showed readings in the same alien script he had seen throughout the ship. But some of the symbols were different, more complex. As he studied the controls, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. A countdown timer was clearly visible on one of the displays, showing numbers that were decreasing steadily. Even without understanding the alien numbering system, he could see the pattern. Whatever this timer was counting down to, it would reach zero in less than 48 hours. The trapped being's eyes met his through the visor of his helmet, and Marcus saw something in that gaze that transcended species barriers. It was a look of desperate hope mixed with resignation, the expression of someone who had been waiting for rescue for a very long time. Marcus activated his suit's external speakers, knowing the sound probably wouldn't carry properly through the chamber's atmosphere, but hoping the alien might understand the intent. "Can you hear me? I'm going to try to get you out of there." The being's lips moved slightly, but no sound reached Marcus through the containment field. However, the alien raised one hand and pressed it against the energy barrier. Where the hand touched, the field flickered slightly, creating patterns of light that almost looked like symbols. Marcus pulled out his tablet and began recording everything. If this being was trying to communicate, he needed to document every detail. The patterns the alien was creating with their hand movements were definitely intentional, repeating in sequences that suggested language or mathematical concepts. After 20 minutes of recording, Marcus had filled his tablet's memory with footage of the alien's attempts at communication. The being seemed to understand that he was documenting their efforts and had even begun pointing at specific control panels around the chamber while making their light dash patterns. As Marcus studied the recorded footage, he began to see patterns that looked almost like engineering schematics. The alien was trying to show him how the containment system worked, pointing out key components and what appeared to be safety overrides, but there was a problem. Every time the alien tried to indicate the shutdown procedure, they would point frantically at the countdown timer and shake their head. Whatever happened when that timer reached zero, it was something the alien was desperately trying to prevent. Marcus spent the next several hours mapping out every control panel and energy conduit in the chamber. His engineering experience told him that this was a sophisticated prison system designed to hold someone indefinitely. But it was also clearly jury-rigged, built into a space that hadn't originally been designed for containment. Someone had converted this chamber specifically to hold this particular prisoner. The more he studied the system, the more Marcus realized that this was beyond his current understanding of alien technology. He would need time to analyze the power systems and figure out how to safely disable the containment field without harming the prisoner. But time was exactly what they didn't have. As the ship's artificial day cycle began to dim the lighting, Marcus made his decision. He gathered up all his recording equipment and headed back to the surface. The trapped being watched him go with eyes full of desperate hope, pressing both hands against the energy barrier. As if trying to break through by will alone, Marcus climbed back through the access shaft with his mind racing. He had discovered something that could change everything humans knew about alien civilizations. But first, he had to figure out how to free someone who had been imprisoned by technology that was centuries beyond human capability. As he reached the main deck of the ship, Marcus was already planning his next steps. He would need specialized equipment, maybe a full engineering team, and definitely more time to study the alien systems. But most importantly, he needed to understand exactly what would happen when that countdown timer reached 0. One thing was certain. He wasn't going to let whoever had trapped that alien succeed in whatever they were planning. Marcus Chen had never walked away from an engineering challenge in his life, and he wasn't about to start now. Even if it meant going up against alien technology that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy, the ship's emergency